Grace had always believed that love built on years could never crumble. She had been married to Michael for almost 20 years, a man she trusted with her whole being. Their house stood in a quiet suburb filled with laughter, memories, and framed photographs that told the story of a life once full of dreams. Grace had spent most of her life supporting his career, standing by him as he built his business from scratch. She was proud of him, proud of the man she thought he was. But sometimes pride can blind the eyes to truth. It was a Thursday evening when she first noticed the change in his voice, the warmth missing, replaced by careful distance. When she asked if he was all right, he smiled that rehearsed smile and said he was just tired. Work had been heavy. She wanted to believe him, so she did, because that is what love does. It trusts until trust becomes the wound itself. Weeks passed. The gap between them grew. She tried to reach him with dinners, with laughter, with old songs, but he was always distracted, his phone always glowing with messages he never shared. She felt it before she knew it, the cold weight in her chest, the kind that whispers, "Something is wrong." One afternoon, Michael told her he would be late. The company needed him for a meeting. But something in his eyes told her otherwise. And when he left, she sat alone on the couch, hearing the clock tick until curiosity turned into pain, and pain turned into courage. She picked up his forgotten tablet on the table. She never meant to spy. She only wanted to understand. And what she found shattered everything. Photos, messages, the kind that make time stop. His assistant, Olivia, words like darling and can't wait to see you again. Every line a knife twisting, slow. She stared at the screen until tears blurred the words. She wanted to scream, but her voice refused to come out. When Michael returned later that night, she was silent. She looked at him, and he knew instantly. The truth hung between them like smoke. He tried to speak, to explain, but no explanation could unburn a heart. She asked quietly, "How long?" And his answer, "Too long," made her body tremble. She didn't shout. She didn't break anything. She just stood and walked out into the cold night, barefoot, under the silver light of the moon. She walked until the numbness turned into sobs that shook her from the inside. Grace sat on a park bench crying, not because she lost a man, but because she lost the version of herself that believed she was enough for him. She returned home before dawn, packed a small bag, and left a note that said, "I loved you even when you stopped loving me. Please don't look for me." She drove for hours until the city disappeared behind her. She stopped near a small seaside town where the ocean roared against the rocks. She rented a tiny apartment above a bookstore. The owner, an elderly woman named Nora, who offered tea and gentle silence. Grace spent days staring at the sea, trying to remember who she was before marriage, before betrayal. Sometimes she painted just to keep her hands from shaking. Sometimes she sat by the water until the horizon felt like a friend. Michael, meanwhile, tried to fill the emptiness she left with work and noise. Olivia, his assistant, still came to the office, but the excitement had turned sour. Guilt has a taste that lingers, and soon even she began to drift away. His empire started to crack. Small mistakes, missed deadlines. Clients who once admired him began to sense something off. His heart wasn't in it anymore. At night, he walked through empty rooms that smelled faintly of her perfume. He missed her laughter, missed the quiet conversations over coffee. But pride chained his apology inside him, and time hardened his loneliness. Grace slowly began to rebuild. She took a part-time job at an art studio, helping children paint. She laughed again, small laughs at first, then real ones. The studio walls became her safe space, each brushstroke washing away another layer of sorrow. One evening, while teaching a little girl how to mix colors, she saw her own reflection in the window and realized she was smiling, not pretending, but truly at peace. For the first time, she started sketching again, something she had abandoned years ago. She painted the sea, the light, the faces of strangers. She began selling her work at local fairs, and people loved it. They said her art felt alive because it carried emotion, raw and unfiltered.
Years passed quietly. Michael's business faltered until he had to sell part of it. He tried to reach her once, but the letter came back unopened. He kept it in a drawer anyway, a monument to what he destroyed. Grace had grown stronger. Her small art business blossomed into a studio of her own. She became known for helping women rediscover themselves through creativity. Her story became silent inspiration for many, though she rarely spoke of what happened. One rainy afternoon, as she closed her studio, she saw a familiar figure standing outside. Older, wearier, but unmistakable. It was Michael. He looked lost in the rain, holding an umbrella that did little to hide the tremble in his hands. She walked toward him, heart calm, not angry, just steady. He said quietly, "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness. I just wanted to see that you're all right." She nodded. "I am." He looked around at the bright studio, windows filled with paintings that told stories of pain turned to strength. He whispered, "You built all this?" She said, "Yes, and I did it alone." He smiled sadly. "I'm proud of you, Grace." For the first time in years, she heard his voice without feeling pain. She said thank you and stepped back as he nodded and walked away, disappearing into the rain. She watched until he was gone and then closed the door behind her, feeling the last shadow lift from her heart. The seasons changed again, and time moved with quiet indifference while Michael's once perfect life began to unravel, piece by piece. Clients grew distant, partners withdrew, deals slipped through his hands as if fate itself had turned away. He spent long nights in the study, surrounded by silence and unfinished work, the same study where his marriage had died. He often stared at the empty chair where Grace used to sit and talk about nothing and everything, her laughter now an echo he could barely remember. He told himself he was fine, that success could still fill the void. But every time he reached for his phone to call her, the words dissolved before they could form. He didn't deserve her voice, not after what he had done. Olivia's absence made the office colder. Her leaving had been quiet, a single email of resignation. She couldn't face him, she said, and he understood because he couldn't face himself either. He tried to bury himself in work, but guilt has a way of finding its way through every distraction. Grace, on the other hand, continued to grow. She had started mentoring other women who had been through betrayal or loss. She spoke to them not as a victim, but as someone who had crossed the fire and come out whole. Her calm strength inspired them. Her studio became more than a business. It became a refuge. She often stayed late, sketching alone with soft music playing, thinking about how life can twist, yet still bloom. One evening, she received an invitation to an awards ceremony. The local Chamber of Commerce was honoring entrepreneurs who had made a social impact, and her name was among them. She hesitated, unsure if she was ready for the attention, but her friends insisted. "You've earned it, Grace." So she went, wearing a deep blue gown, her hair tied simply. The lights, the applause, the voices, all felt like a distant dream until she saw him. Across the room, Michael stood near the back, older, thinner, his eyes carrying the weight of sleepless years. He had not expected to see her there. When their eyes met, time stopped. He wanted to look away, but couldn't. Grace didn't falter. She offered him a small, polite nod and turned back to the stage. It was a gesture of peace, but also of distance. Later, as she stepped outside into the cool night air, he followed, slowly, unsure of what he would say. He finally spoke.
Grace. She turned, the sound of his voice strange after so long. "Hello, Michael," he said. "You look well." And she replied, "I am. I hope you are too." He gave a small, sad smile. "No, I'm not, but I'm glad you are." Silence stretched between them, filled with everything they could never undo. He finally said, "I wanted to say I'm sorry, not for your forgiveness, though I pray for it every day, but because you deserved better." She looked at him, her eyes gentle yet strong. "I know you're sorry," she said, "but we can't live forever inside regret. You taught me that the world doesn't end when someone breaks your heart. It just begins again in a different way." He lowered his head and said, "I still love you." She answered quietly, "Then love me enough to let me go." He nodded, tears in his eyes. As she walked away under the streetlights, her figure fading into the crowd, he realized that the woman he had once taken for granted had become someone far beyond his reach. Grace didn't look back. She didn't need to. Closure wasn't about final words, it was about peace, and she finally had it. The next morning, she woke early, sunlight spilling through the curtains. She opened the window and breathed in the crisp air. She thought of how far she had come from that day she had found them in the study, from the night she sat crying on the balcony, to this moment, standing tall and unbroken. She whispered to herself, "I made it." In the months that followed, her story continued to inspire. She was invited to speak at conferences. Her studio expanded to multiple cities. She often ended her talks with the same words: "Heartbreak is not the end. It's the beginning of becoming unstoppable." Michael eventually sold his company and moved to a smaller town near the sea. He lived quietly there, spending his days painting, something he had once loved before life had hardened him. Sometimes he would watch the waves crash and think of Grace, not with pain anymore, but with gratitude, because she had shown him what real strength looked like. He never remarried. He didn't need to. He had already met the only person who had truly loved him. Grace, meanwhile, kept building her world. She never remarried either, not because of bitterness, but because she had finally found contentment within herself. Sometimes, on Sunday mornings, she would walk through the park and see couples laughing, holding hands. She would smile gently, remembering both the beauty and the cost of love. She understood now that love is not measured by how long it lasts, but by how deeply it changes you. And she had been changed forever. The woman who once believed her life ended with betrayal had discovered that every ending hides a new beginning. Years passed quietly, like pages turning in a book. Grace's hair grew streaks of silver, but her spirit stayed radiant. She had become a symbol of resilience for many women who came to her workshops. She listened to their stories with compassion, never judging, never speaking of her own pain unless it could help them heal. Her eyes held the calm of someone who had walked through storms and learned not to fear the rain. She often spent her evenings in the garden behind her house, surrounded by flowers that had once been seedlings when she planted them during her recovery. Now they stood tall, swaying softly in the wind, each petal a reminder that growth takes time and patience. She would sit on the wooden bench, sketchbook on her lap, and draw, not for business, but for peace. Sometimes her thoughts drifted to the past, to that younger version of herself who had trusted blindly, loved deeply, and broken completely. She felt no anger toward that woman, only gratitude for her courage. It was that heartbreak that had pushed her toward the life she lived now. She remembered Michael too, not with bitterness, but with an understanding that came only from distance. She had once believed forgiveness meant accepting betrayal, but she had learned it simply meant freeing yourself from the weight of hate. One evening, as she watched the sunset, her assistant, now a young woman she had mentored, handed her a letter. It was from Michael, the handwriting shaky, almost hesitant. It said, "Dear Grace, I don't know if this will reach you, but I wanted to say thank you. Your strength changed me. I am living quietly, painting every day.
I found a kind of peace I didn't think was possible, and it began the moment you forgave me. You were always my better half, not in marriage, but in spirit. I hope life keeps giving you light and love, always. Michael." She folded the letter carefully, a soft smile touching her lips. She whispered into the fading light, "Goodbye, Michael," and meant it from her heart. That night, she slept soundly for the first time in years, dreaming not of the past, but of open skies and endless fields where nothing hurt anymore. In the morning, she rose early and began painting again, her strokes light yet confident, colors flowing like emotions finally set free. Her studio had become a place of stories. Every painting held a memory, not of sorrow, but of transformation. People came from far away to see her work, drawn to the warmth she poured into each canvas. One critic once wrote, "Her art feels like healing itself, as if the paint forgives you while you look at it." She smiled when she read that, because it was true. For her, every brushstroke had been a step toward wholeness. One summer afternoon, she hosted an exhibition called Rebirth. It was filled with pieces that symbolized renewal. One painting caught everyone's eye. It was of a cracked vase mended with golden lines, inspired by the Japanese art of kintsugi, the idea that broken things can be made even more beautiful. She stood beside it as guests admired the piece and quietly said to a woman beside her, "We all break, but it's how we mend that defines us." When the crowd left, she stayed behind in the empty gallery, gazing at the painting. The sun set through the windows, casting a golden glow around her. She thought about how strange life was, how pain could become purpose, how betrayal could bloom into wisdom. She realized she no longer needed anyone to complete her. She had built a life that was hers alone, full of art, laughter, and quiet mornings. The emptiness she once feared had turned into space for peace. Years later, when her name became known across cities, she was invited to deliver a keynote speech at a global women's summit. She stood on stage before hundreds, her voice steady, her message simple. "Once upon a time, I thought losing love meant losing myself, but I learned that sometimes we have to be broken open to see our own strength." The audience fell silent, every eye on her as she continued. Forgiveness is not weakness, it's courage, the kind that rebuilds worlds after they've fallen. Her words echoed in the hall like music. Afterward, many women approached her in tears, saying her story had changed them. She hugged each one, knowing that healing is a circle that keeps expanding. That night in her hotel room, she sat by the window looking out at the city lights. She felt a deep calm, not the restless kind that comes from waiting for happiness, but the settled peace of someone who has already found it. She whispered a small prayer of gratitude for every wound that had shaped her, every moment that had broken her open to love again in a new form. When she finally turned off the light, she didn't feel alone. The stars outside seemed closer, as if the universe itself was whispering back, "You made it." And so, Grace's story became more than a tale of betrayal. It became a story of awakening, proof that a woman's worth is never defined by who stays or who leaves, but by the strength with which she stands after the storm. For somewhere in the quiet after heartbreak, there is always a second sunrise waiting to be seen.